Mic check, 1, 2, 3. Mic check. Mic check, city council meeting, 1, 2, 3. Mic check, city council meeting, 1, 2, 3. Table mic. Mic check, 1, 2, 3. Mic check, 1, 2, 3. Mic check, 1, 2, 3. Cross fingers.
week to smoke.
Smoke?
In the elevator.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. So,
Wonderful. And always a pleasure to see you.
I know, likewise.
How's the school season going?
So far, so good.
Good, good.
2 weeks in, into
Oh, because of
With the rain.
The rain.
I've talked to friends of mine that I haven't mowed my lawn for 6 weeks.
Really? There was
Not
nothing
done
at
it
all?
twice in 3 days.
I know. It's funny because I now that you mention it, my husband does all the road, and I was out playing with the dogs this morning, and I noticed that the backyard seemed long, and I know he just did it. And of course, I'm always trying to get him to slow down, and he does so much, and I'm always trying to like say to him, just do a half hour or do an hour,
not long.
So I knew that he had just done it, and
I actually.
and we've had, I'm sure like everyone, our grasses look,
September 19th, 2022. The first item on the agenda is a presentation on the 2022 Summer Youth Employment Program. Mr. Farley?
Yeah, so I guess at this point I want to bring up Dr. Cotto from Schenectady City School District. As you all know, this program was an extremely meaningful program. However, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, extremely meaningful program, and it really required the support of all the council. And I was really pleased that we were able to kind of have our ideas align, even though there were some questions, and I think that it might have not turned out the way we initially intended, but our ability to kind of rally around our youth really gave us a great opportunity to see what they can do and give them, make some investment in them. So I was just really happy to introduce Dr. Cotto, but before I even did that, I just wanted to express my gratitude to the council and as well as the mayor for really supporting this and actually bringing this forward. So, Dr. Cotto.
Thank you, and based on what Damani has also shared, I want to thank City Council and the Mayor for supporting these efforts as it relates to our youth here in Schenectady and the opportunities that they had this summer. I have provided, the packet that you have has the presentation in it, but there's also some information on the district end as far as district calendar, our spotlight, the things that we highlighted for last year, and some other information as it relates to the district as a whole. As I get started, I just want to kind of share our strategic plan as a whole. This is something that we kind of start most of our presentations with. And I will tell you, it completely aligns with this work that we did with our youth this summer, because at the end of the day, we're trying to grow our own here in this community. So as we look at the district, as we look at community, staff, and overall students, as you look at each of those particular strategic areas, the youth employment piece definitely provides access in all those areas as it relates to the district in a whole. Again, we anchor everything with our vision, our tagline, and our core values. This also kind of resonated throughout the course of this summer and throughout the course of the school year. We're still working on that everyone counts, everyone learns. Still working on the equity, the collaboration, and the hope is that this is just a start of strengthening those particular pieces as it relates to some of this work. And then our 4 pillars, which anchors all of this work. At the end of the day, our goal is to graduate our students on time and prepare them for college and career opportunities, but also skills, trades, entrepreneurship, workforce development, really trying to provide pathways that provide them with those kind of experiences at an early age, so that as they transition into middle and high school, they now have more information in which the information they need in order to make some sound decisions around their career paths as a whole. And again, a lot of the experiences that our youth kind of experienced over the summer provided some of that kind of pathway in some aspects, and in others, it was just an experience that helps to transition on those leadership skills that are needed just to be a productive young man or young lady within our community. So now I jump right into our summer youth program. This summer we had 265 youth that were served. This work that was done, it was done in partnership with Schenectady Connects, or Summer Youth Employment, so working with Jen Bargy in kind of facilitating some of this work as a whole. We received over 479 applications. Out of those 479 applications, the next slide I'll kind of give a breakdown of where we landed as far as providing those students those opportunities. But the partnerships that took place throughout this process were a combination of non-for-profit, government, and private sector organizations. We had over 72 work sites, and we've highlighted a couple of them in this particular slide here, with counseling and training, food services, clerical, retail, landscaping positions, and many others. I can't thank enough City Council and the Mayor for supporting these efforts. The initial goal was to have 75 of our students benefit from this program, and we did service 75 of our students in the district. In doing that, the breakdown as it relates to the overall percentage and that the age range, we had those students under the age of 18, about 65% of our students were under the age of 18, and then the ages of 14 and 15, about 35%. I'm sorry, this broke down a little differently, so I'm reading it wrong, so let me make sure that I break it down as a... So all of our students were under the age of 18, and those that were serviced between the ages of 14 to 15 were about 65% of the students, and then 35 between the ages of 16 and 17. Without the support, these 75 students wouldn't have this access to these opportunities, and they wouldn't build around those transitional skills that are required regardless of the kind of job that you have. You learn a lot in every job that you kind of navigate, and all those things help strengthen you as a leader. So there's never the wrong job, it's just how do you process. I would share one of my first jobs was KFC, and I only lasted 2 weeks. but I learned a lot from that experience as a whole. And I think our students, whether it's whether that transition is the right one or the experience is the right one, at the end of the day, you gain, whether positive or negative, you gain things that will just strengthen you as a leader. So the program itself, 20 obtained employment from within that 75 students, and they have standing offers within that overall employment opportunity. Or a higher, within that process, there are favorable recommendations from that work site to continue within that work, so they have the opportunity to continue within those particular areas. All of our youth were under the age of 18, and the older programs have been working closely, for those older ones, they're working closely to kind of support them as they now transition into the real world. So those experiences have also led them to that kind of opportunity. From the video, and I think I skipped the video, I'm gonna see if I can go back here, just to kind of highlight, I'm not sure how to do it from here, but let me just go this way. The video that took place over at the high school that kind of got some input from our students. A little commercial before I get started. Yes.
Might be on the cut.
We can't even run their lip before they got mask on. There's no more masks at school, right? Yeah, there is still.
Can't even read lips because of the mask.
There you go. Set this up.
Music in any way, shape, or form that they feel. Another idea I had was like a video, like a student video company kind of, a way for like students to release PSA.
What are you, what we're looking for is what are your ideas? What are your thoughts? When you first heard the opportunity, hey, the city has job opportunities this summer, and it's all about making Schenectady a more beautiful, better place. Not just the city, but also the schools and the department within the city. What were some of your ideas?
Hi, my name is Isaiah. I'm a sophomore at Schenectady High. Some of my ideas is for one, I'm a musical person, so one idea I have is a studio so that kids can express themselves through music in any way, shape, or form that they feel. Another idea I had was like a video, like a student video company kind of, a way for like students to release PSAs, art videos, messages to kids of stuff not to do and stuff to do, ways to help out.
Hello, my name is Andy Renoff, and I'm a junior at Schenectady High School, and one of my ideas for the summer employment opportunity for students is to initiate a trash can installation program at the edges or corners of roads in Schenectady, because one of the big issues Schenectady has is the enormous amounts of trash just disposed along the streets, and this would help in the long term because people would actually be able to use these trash cans for longer than they would actually do some just picking up trash on the side of the road.
Hi, my name is Kaylee Evans. I'm a sophomore at Schenectady High School, and I have some ideas for the summer employment program. I was thinking that we could do clothing and food drives along with making more opportunities for younger children at parks so it's more accessible and there's more activities for them there as well.
Your tutoring, right? Painting, not just murals, but painting, right? We talked about first coat of paint, always looks good. We talked about fixing up some more hoops and basketball places in the city.
My name is Amira Harris. So I want to talk about like crosswalks and stuff. A lot of the times they don't work, like the specific one that's supposed to come out with like the white statue to like, indicate that it's time for you to cross. They don't work a lot of times, especially in downtown Schenectady. And I think there should be a lot more implemented like around the city of Schenectady. There's a lot of movement and it really helped me when I was there. Another thing is about like the parks. I think we should beautify the parks. Like, add like basketball hoops. Because I know kids will come there and literally play, all afternoon and make it more kid friendly.
Right, I like that. That would be real creative, right? We're actually might think about a rainbow crosswalk, right? That would represent a lot, some diversity there, right?
So then that overall conversation with the students was with the two principals of the building, Chris Shank and Dennis Green, just engaging in conversation with, which then led to kind of some of their overall thoughts and kind of ideas that they wanted to kind of deliver throughout the community as a whole. With that said, I mean, after that video, these were the areas that the youth and that within the partnership as a whole were provided for students. So the food drives, the insecurity that the students spoke of, the Cornell Cooperative, Extension Roots and Wisdom, SICM, Price Chopper, NISCA Co-op, were just some of those partners that were, those work sites that were provided to the students for those overall experiences. Beautification of the city. So anchoring on some of the things that were discussed even here at City Council, these were some of the overall programs that were provided to the students within these two buckets of focus areas. So the Retreat Project, Hamilton Hill Arts Center, and then the Schenectady County Conservation District were those areas within the beautification piece. The parks and other opportunities for children. We did have 6 of our students that worked through our summer enrichment program. And again, that kind of gets them engaged into that opportunity to work with students. The goal then is to kind of inspire them and motivate them to shift into becoming educators and becoming teachers within our district. 5 worked with the Boys and Girls Club. Same kind of concept, because those are some of the areas where our students kind of thrive, sports and being involved in those type of activities and engaging within our youth. Girls Inc., know that that's a huge motivating piece for our young ladies, and that program does a phenomenal job in the community. So helping to move those young ladies into those kind of leadership roles there. My side has been a major partner as well, which helps with the STEM kind of opportunities and those particular accesses. My Daughter and Me, which is a program that runs within the community as a whole. Again, just motivating and inspiring young ladies to believe in self. And the Parsons Early Learning Center. The one I just want to share, there was a young lady that they highlighted in reference to each particular site had the opportunity to recognize their employee of the summer. And this one was pretty interesting in the fact that the young lady was extremely shy before she started. But then as she started to working within, at the cashier and having to have the conversations, it built on her overall confidence, and she's actually now employed part-time within that particular CVS. But it's just that story that at the end of the day, once we connect our students to these opportunities, it's just the start of where that then goes later on. And she's doing a phenomenal job and now has built on her overall self-esteem and confidence and is out there, doing her thing. That kind of completes the overall survey. I mean, here we as a district have this tagline of Schenectady Rising. I do believe that this supports those efforts in the community as a whole. Ultimately, these 75 students that were supported through City Council and the Mayor, 75 students that would have not been supported, that have all had an experience this summer that now is either going to continue throughout the school year, and if not, they've transitioned those skills into preparing themselves for this upcoming academic year and preparing to now kind of plan for their future. Schenectady is something that we lead within our district as well, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we're still working on bringing all these pieces together, but at the end of the day, we're trying to do all that we can to provide access to all within our community. With that said, any questions for me? If that works, I'm sure.
So I just want to clarify the 20 beyond. So there were students out of the 75 that kept it. 20 of them are working beyond the summer employment?
Yes.
Okay.
That they were able to continue within those, and then others, depending on whether or not they transitioned into sports, but 20 of them were sustained throughout the continuum.
Thank you.
So next year, will it be another group, like give another 75 children a chance, or would we fall back to these children who already were working in the workforce this year?
I think a combination. I mean, I think for those that are involved, hopefully the organizations in which they're working for, they transition into those.
Right.
But I think even for this, it was open to all. We focused on the 75 within the district, and then many others, also had the opportunity. But I would say a combination if we could. I mean, because again, some of those particular jobs may be seeking those same individuals, because some of them are as young as 14, so kind of growing within that overall. And we'll connect with those students as well to kind of get a better sense on whether their desire is to continue, because it's an area that they want to build upon as leaders in the community.
Very nice. So it seems as though the 75 students, there were sort of distinct jobs and job opportunities for these 75 students within the larger Schenectady job improvement, I forget what the acronym is, but within that Schenectady County piece, these 75 students were held distinct with the funding that we as a city had provided, which was one of my concerns when we first talked about it. So I'm hearing that correctly?
Yes, I mean, I think even with the video itself anchored those, and so as they met, I mean, there's a process to it. So there's an interview process, and they place the students based on that interview process, but also based on the feedback that we provided in reference to where they want to work. And there was a focus for our students in reference to what that video shared as far as those different, and we had a printout that kind of also spoke to their overall interest in doing things within the community as a whole.
And one more. The video was before they all.
Yes.
Okay. Because I know that we had talked about that initially as well, because it sounded like, that was initially, I think, Mayor McCarthy's goal was to try to come up with projects that the students were interested in doing, and it sounds like the video met that.
Yes.
Need.
And that video was done even before I presented to.
That's what I was
the
thinking,
kids.
yeah, okay. So and then you tailored some of these positions to those different areas?
Yes.
Interesting, and I'm glad about that.
In terms of funding, did we utilize all the funding that was allocated?
I don't believe we did. So I know that there was conversations around looking throughout the course of the school year and supporting some of those efforts. I know the 20 have kind of shifted into roles outside of the school day, but I don't know exactly the amount, I think, but I know that with the 75, it wasn't going to, hit the threshold of what was supported to fund this.
Along those same lines, I've been getting a lot of questions like that. Could you send us a pretty detailed accounting of where the money went to, how much was spent, and the job titles associated with, not the students, I mean, we have that, but the administrative costs and things like that?
So far, the city hasn't paid anything.
Well, I'm assuming there will be at some point a payment out.
A check is in the mail.
Check is in the mail.
At some point, yeah.
But that would be appreciated.
Yeah.
When you're sending that, can you please send it to the entire council? Or
Yes.
send it
Yeah,
to-
that's what I meant. Thank you, John.
And the 75 to 75 students, were they each given some sort of an evaluation form or something? I mean, I loved the story that you shared. But I was just wondering if you had that data.
They are. I mean, there's a coach that was attached to them
Yes.
throughout the process as well that coached them through, and I mean that coach would also assess whether they were coming in on time. But there's also an end of the program evaluation that speaks. There's also an evaluation of the interview to kind of highlight how well. Now, I don't know if that was a physical piece of paper that was given, and if they kept, but I can check to see if they've kept copies. But throughout the process, I wouldn't say evaluated, but they're kind of coached throughout.
Oh, yes.
And then they're provided with a closure kind of
I actually
summary.
meant the other way. I remember that from when I was working and participated in this kind of a program, but I meant were the students given something to evaluate their own experiences, like the young woman's story that you shared. Do you think that each of the 70, I'd just be interested to see what they thought about their experiences.
I think there's a but even if there wasn't, like, we can do that, as a district. We have ways in which to get a reflective piece. But I can check to see if there was one on that end, but if not, we can do one on that.
So I think that, the idea of this young woman who gained her confidence and was able to, a little bit find a voice that maybe she didn't start out the experience with is really rich and very meaningful. So I appreciate you sharing that story.
And I think that, our commitment to this program, I think that, one of the things that, to your point, I think you bring really good points, that what we want to do is we want to hear from the participants themselves. And I think that, so we want to, create, intentionally create some space and time for us to do that. I think that would be really, really valuable. Not just for our own information, but it kind of reinforces to the students, like, we're listening to you, and we're not just saying, here, let's, write a check and then you just go get a job. Like, we're listening to you. We want to see where we can be better at, and we want to make sure that we're hitting the mark here. And I think so. Kind of to the mayor's initial idea around these things. I don't think that we have fully gotten there. So I think that it's a process that we have to continue to build on, because I think this is a really important kind of stepping stone piece. But I think that hearing from the youth themselves, they will give us a lot of great feedback, and I can't stress that enough. So I think we will create some time and space to do that. Any other questions?
Thank you, Dr. Cotto.
Thank you.
Thank you so
all.
much.
Call to order Finance Committee, and the first item is amend agreement to reimburse Schenectady County for work performed on behalf of the City of Schenectady Police Department. Mr. Mayor, you take this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an agreement that we've been in with the county for a number of years. This offsets, we subsidize the cost of an investigator in the district attorney's office. In the kind of a simple recap of the process, normally, up until the arrest, all the expenses are the responsibility of the police department. After an arrest, then the prosecution, I think, goes to the DA's office. Rick Voris, who's one of the investigators in the DA's office, has been very intricately involved in the evolution of the camera system and some of the technology. So he comes in on a regular basis and staffs some of the stuff to help the police really pre-arrest. When the crime's committed, they will cue the cameras up, document the activity, which leads to an arrest. And some of that is, technically, when you look at it, really should be the responsibility of the police department. They do it. So this agreement, we pay for some of that to the county. And we don't get down to auditing every dollar. Is he there for so many hours? But it's been a very functional and pragmatic relationship that has produced efficiencies both in the DA's office and from the police department's perspective. And this, I think we're looking for a 3-year contract at $21,000, and would appreciate the council's authorization to be able to continue that.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, we are looking for, actually, we passed in January 2021, but what we passed, we passed for 3 years. And this is, according to Mr. Colden, is an amendment to that agreement, right?
It's to extend it, yes.
So that it's starting year 1 and then 3 years automatic renewal.
It's our intent to renew it. Would be subject still to budgetary approval from the council, and the decision being in the DA's office.
Okay.
Any other questions on this item? May I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second. All in favor? Aye. The next item is discussion, noise violation, and this is a follow-up. Mr. Palomini.
Yes, this will be quick, just to keep it on the radar. Mr. Coluccio will be at the next meeting to present on this issue, and just wanted to keep it out there because a couple people were asking about it, and due to different things, scheduling conflicts and whatnot, it will be at the next meeting.
Just to add to this, and that we wait until, could we get a cost study on this, if possible?
I'll see if we can do it.
We don't have to delay, and have to hold it until the next following.
A lot of it's already in place, and he'll talk about that.
Okay. All right, so we'll have this in 2 weeks' time back on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. The next item is discussion, American Rescue Plan Act. Mr. Farley.
You see him?
No,
Okay.
it looks like he's coming. Alex.
Well, I'm sure. It's up to you.
You want to talk about it?
I can only talk, I don't want to speak to Mr. Farley, but I knew that what the reason he asked to have it back on the agenda was, as you all know, we talked about, it's for you, Anthony. We talked about this. And so about having a second round, and that when we initially talked about it, that there was much conversation about a second round, and even on the website it said that the first money was the initial round. And so Mr. Farley's point was we should be discussing and making real efforts to have a second round. So that's my understanding of my conversations with him. I don't want to speak for him entirely, but that's it.
Any discussion?
Should we wait till?
I'd like to hear from Mr. Farley.
Okay.
Can you see him?
No, I can't. And he wasn't talking to Dr. Cotto. I mean,
He was not, or he
no, it
was?
was, you were talking to Dr. Cotto, I think, right? Yeah.
So should we put this off for 2 weeks?
Well, he'll be back in the room in a minute, so we can hear whatever he has to say. I don't know if he has his phone.
Oh, here he comes. He's coming now.
try to recap what our discussion so you can say what it is that you have to, this topic of the ARPA.
Sure. So last committee meeting we discussed, and throughout the process we talked about the possibility of there being a second round application process. And my thoughts on that were that that's something that we said we were going to do, and I just think that if we have the capacity to do it, then we should do it. But I know that there's also some considerations that we have to make around projects, right? So I think that if we can kind of put our heads together to see how we can manage to do both things, I think that's the way that we should be thinking. That's all.
Open up for other questions in regards to this. No? Go ahead, please.
I respectfully disagree with opening up the process again. I think that we've spent a lot of time on the first round, and we still have many applications that we have not considered from the first round. Plus, I think we're down to about $9 million that is left in the original $52 million.
Oh, no, last was the last time we said 10, so did we spend a million?
No, it was like under 10 or, that kind of thing. So I wasn't here 2 weeks ago, so I, didn't keep as good track that time. So I just feel like there's still some projects that I think each of us might want to still see come to the table. I don't know when we're going to have that discussion, but from the first round. So I'd leave it at that. But I think reopening another grant application process will, and I know we have time, but I just feel that it's not fair to the initial grant applicants that we may not have already considered. So I leave it at that. That's my piece.
I'm sorry.
It's not my committee.
So what I was saying, I can see why you might feel that way. So I don't think we're too far apart on thinking on that, which is a good thing. But I guess then I think we should have kind of framed it differently, like just the language that we used on the city website, and the conversation that we had in previous committee meetings. The public has an expectation that for people who didn't submit the application for the first round, that they would have an opportunity to submit for the second round. So I don't know that it has to be either or. I think that we do need to look at the funds that are remaining and still consider some of the different projects that have rose to the level of kind of priority through the development office, as well as feedback that we've gotten from stakeholders. So I think we can do both, and I think we should do both. And I wouldn't be opposed to the idea of I know that having the advisory committee, some of the other things, I don't think we need to do if we could still do it without those things that made it the process a little longer. But I do think that again, that we kind of need to honor our word and see if we can do both. That's the way we should be thinking. But I appreciate your feedback.
Any other? Go ahead.
Once again, just want to clarify, we didn't all agree to this, and I understand what you're saying, but people need to understand that wasn't a council agreement. If we wanted to have a second round, it would have made much more sense to, I think, a point Ms. Tutorial made to stop around the 26 million point. That would have been fair, and it would have given everybody an opportunity. Now we're at less than $10 million. Quite frankly, this doesn't make sense to me at this point. And I would be strongly opposed to a second round.
Mr. Jerome.
That's
all right.
Defer to the council.
Thank you. So again, I didn't look at the city website, but if it says initial, initial being how we're starting. First doesn't mean there's a second. I was never in favor of a second round at all. And there's still quite a few projects that the initial grant organizations put in, their grants, that I would like to still push through. And how fair is it to them and we got $76 million in requests from the first initial process. So now we have like 9.8 million left to spend. We open it up for a second round, and there's $80 million worth of, I mean, it's over, it's done, we have our applications, let's move it. Thank you, sir.
Who has what? May
So
I ask?
Okay, so I just want to clarify that the idea of having applications, it was not council's decision, and it still really isn't a council decision. That's the mayor's decision, because it's his staff that has to do the work. So it's like we can express our opinions, but as we know, the idea of doing the tours, the idea of opening the application process and all that, that's something that's an administrative function, and that's how this all happened. So I just wanted, the mayor's going to speak next, so I just want us to keep that in mind. Although we have our opinions, the staff does what the mayor's direction is, and it was his direction on this to have an application process. And the ask, and I will say that I was really the driving force was about the advisory committee, which I still do not think was a bad idea. It didn't work out as well as had hoped, but people got to give input, and I will never say that that's the wrong thing for our community to be able to give input, and others who, we get to sit at this table right now, the 7 of us. However, there were times when we were the other people who were just in the community, or as we refer to people. So individuals who don't necessarily sit with us every day, that we ask people to sit on committees, and et cetera, have input and valuable input. So that part of it, I would not ask if there were a second round, which I do support. I would not ask that there be an advisory committee. But again, that whether or not there's a round of applications, really, that comes out of the mayor's office.
My position at this point is, the council has moved through what I would call an interesting process. You have authorized the expenditure on a number of projects. We're, from the administration side now, starting to put together contracts for those projects. I am skeptical on some of the assumptions and some of the numbers that are in those. And where you say there's X number of dollars left could very well be true. I'm not sure that's going to hold up. And what I want is some time to be able to evaluate those projects, move ahead so that we have better cost estimates to make sure what the council has done so far are going to be successful and we're going to be able to complete it. And I don't have a time on that. Is that going to take us 30 days? I can tell you no, it's going to be longer. I don't know how much longer, but before we go off and start to talk about spending other money, I want to make sure we have money to complete what we've started, and then again be able to use that money in the manner that will best leverage the resources within the community, so that it'll give you some updates on a regular basis. The structures look to have kind of a standard component of the contract, and then there will be a variable depending on what that specific project is and what goals we're looking for. Some are conditioned upon other funding. There's always site control. There can be major deals, and some of these have not been done before, so it's a little bit complicated. And so at this point, you've given myself and the staff a lot of work to do. We're looking forward to going ahead with that, and I'm not in a rush to make commitments on what is perceived to be money that's left over at this point.
Thank you. The last time we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, there were strong arguments on both sides, and we had the full council, and I was on the fence. I mean, we received roughly about 70 applications for funding. We went through these applications through the advisory, to the council. We funded many of these community projects and many of the city projects. We are at roughly $42 million of allocation already, with a balance of about $10 million, $9 million remaining. add to the mayor, we need to look at, there are a couple of projects that we need to look at, and people are calling out the Woodland Park, the Grove Park, and Steinman Parks. Those are parks that we need to address because these are parks that for over years have not received any funding, so I think it's wise for us to allocate some funding there. And I would ask the mayor and staff to look at how possible we can fund these parks and some projects out there. Also with job retention, I think I will ask that if we can get a more accurate number on the job retention over the period of time that was presented to us. And overall, I am not in favor of us opening up another road. We have many applications here. Let's look at the applications in hand, and let's look at them. Let's look at the in-house projects that the mayor has. And in terms of that, let's try to keep much of the remaining funding within the city. I think that will overall help us with the budget over the next couple of years.
So I think, to the mayor's point, I can definitely get behind, us. I think it would be pretty wise of us to see exactly, how the commitments that we've already made, how they're going to flush out, and make sure that our numbers are accurate. So when if and when we do, communicate that to our larger community, saying, hey, we're going to open up another applications or not, at least that we know where we stand. I think we need to make an informed decision. So I can really appreciate that. So I definitely would support that. Two things can be true, and I think that we need to know where we're at so we have solid footing and making informed decisions going forward. And I think that we also need to make every effort to honor what we said we were going to do and honor the expectations of the people in the community. And I really appreciate the fact that this is something that hasn't happened before. And I think that that is really a good thing, and it's a unique opportunity to change the material conditions of people that live here in the city. So we just want to continue to keep that as the lens that we're using when we're thinking about what we're going to do with this funding moving forward. So I would say that I'm in favor of what the mayor is saying around let's give the staff time to kind of look at where we're standing now. But again, I just want to be clear that I still think that we should find ways to give the community access to these funds.
Any question on this item? So is there an agreement to wait until the mayor comes back to us with his findings on how we move forward?
I think I can.
Is that what I'm sensing in the council now?
I think that's just the best way, the best direction
Oh.
to go in. It just makes sense. And Mayor and I, he did mention that even before this meeting, so it makes sense. We have to see where we land.
And again, in agreement with the mayor, and there may be some funds that we give back as well with some of the money that we doled out to the organizations in need who may not be able to meet the contingency. So there may be funding coming back to us. So let's just give it all a break and take a breath. Good.
So we're good. I just clicked me. There was an email that was sent to us, I think it's Friday, with regards to Cocoa House wanting to amend their application after the fact that they were funded. I think that's very problematic to revise or amend an application after the funding was already allocated. So I think that we have to bear in mind that we, as a council, should look at that and not support something like that. Because if we're going to do that, then we have to do it for everybody. And what are we creating? We're creating problems. But after the fact, we're changing the application just to avoid the contingency. So I just want to bring that to the table in regards to that email.
And we all saw the email, and I agree that, it was really clearly stated that we were trying to, it didn't say avoid contingency, but it did say eliminate. Eliminate was the word to use. So I want to have a conversation with the mayor and development, but I don't see that we voted through a piece of legislation for it as the application was presented to us. So now to come back and to say, we'd like to change that, although you voted it through like this, it's different than those who came and asked for revisions prior to us voting. That's very different. So in terms of that, to me, that almost looks like you need to like come back with a whole new application because it's a very different scope of work. Very, very different.
Go ahead, please.
Total agreement with President Porterfield. Absolutely, I feel the same way.
Any other question on that item, on that email?
A motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second. All in favor? Aye. The next item is, call to order public safety. And the first one item is a discussion reducing city speed limit to 25 miles per hour. Ms. Patrick.
Yes, so we had previously discussed reducing the speed limit to 25 miles per hour. The council voted to have a letter sent to the governor requesting that she sign that legislation. I think this was back in June that we had that conversation. And she did, indeed.
Right after she got that letter?
It was right after she opened the letter and she actually said, gee, the Schenectady City Council wants us to.
Patrick sent me a letter.
No, but in any case, she did recently sign the legislation, which I think many people across the state, including the New York Council of Mayors, advocated for that reduction in the speed limit. So I wanted to bring that conversation back to the table. I wanted to ask the question of staff. I wanted to hear from Chief Clifford about his thoughts about reducing the speed limit. I was hoping that we could ask him to speak to that. I also want to raise the question, I know that we can't just say, gee, we're going to reduce the speed limit to 25. There's a lot that would go into all of that. And so I think that's the question for staff as well, is what would we need to do in order to implement the 25 mile per hour, a 25 mile per hour speed limit. So I just wanted to make sure that we reopen the discussion based on the fact that Governor Hochul did indeed sign the legislation.
Right.
So
is that why you've invited the chief?
yes,
Chief,
yeah.
you want to come up?
Sure.
So I'm generally in support of the 25 mile per hour speed limit. I think that we're becoming more of a pedestrian-friendly community. You see many more people riding bicycles out there, and there's just a lot of generally activity out on the streets where encouraging motorists to drive slower is a good idea. With a 30 mile an hour speed limit, I think we're seeing those push the limits by going 7, 10 miles an hour over. That brings us close to 40 miles an hour. And even when we write the tickets, they go through the court system. They only look like they're 7 miles an hour. It doesn't look as bad as 12 or 15. It gives our judges a little bit more ability to give points to reckless drivers that are going over the speed limit a little bit more. Gives motivation to the driver to drive slower, knowing that could be the repercussion, which is to have points put on their license, which increases their insurance rates. And I live in the city, I drive around a lot, I see a lot of the speeders that are out there, they're out there. So what I would recommend is if we do this, we have to have a good public relations campaign of educating drivers that they need to reduce their speed, maybe tell them why it's important to them to reduce their speed, and then we'll take a gradual approach to enforcement. But then once we decide to start enforcing it, we will certainly do so.
So Van.
This one. So Chief, you talk about a PR in terms of public educational system. What about in terms of the resource needed for this enforcement, if this were to happen?
Yeah, that's currently like my biggest challenge is my resources, having enough officers to do it. But I'm hopeful that by the time we actually implemented it, because I'm of the understanding that some studies would need to be done citywide. And then, of course, we have to do all the sign changing, everything. We would have some time. And by then, we'll have the staffing in place to be able to do the enforcement. I'm currently down one officer in my traffic division that we haven't replaced until we get the ones out of the academy. But by this time next year, we will certainly, hopefully, be fully staffed. That's my hope.
And that was the reason why I asked the question, because you're stretched in.
Yes.
To give you more enforcement, how are we going to be able to carry out those enforcement in terms of reducing this? Go ahead, Ms. Patrick.
Actually, my question was going to be about enforcement, because certainly that was something that, we've heard from various residents about that concern around enforcement. But I think also you touched on the idea that traffic studies would have to happen as well. And I think we could speak to that a little bit as well, that before we would move in a direction, we'd have to also undergo traffic studies to really look at where, in particular, the speeding is happening, where is there more accidents. I mean, some of that data we already have collected in previous we've had Mr. Coluccio, I think, speak to some of the accident areas, the prevalence of accidents, I should say. But those studies, I'm not sure if those are studies that happen through Mr. Coluccio's office, or how.
My understanding is we would get a traffic consultant to do that. We can provide them some data. It's going to require outside engineering evaluation.
Mayor, to add to that, can we also attach, when the study is being done on the traffic, can we attach a cost study in terms of replacing the signs and also additional staffing for enforcement?
Yes, I think Jen had some numbers for the sign replacement. I don't know if the chief has. Enforcement can be a widely variant number, depending on the availability of staff and, again, what the circumstances are in the field.
And is that something that we can easily put together over the course of time when we come back for presentation?
Definitely, yeah. We would look at enforcement from being on a daily level, but then we would also put together targeted details in certain areas, knowing where the complaints are coming from, and then we would be able to have a higher concentration and make it be known to the motorists that we're out there enforcing it. That's the most important thing. We always want to try to get voluntary compliance, and the best way we do that is to be visibly enforcing it.
Perfect. Go ahead.
So my question was more towards the mayor. Mr. Mayor, do you see any way that kind of the smart city technology that we've installed kind of supporting this as far as the studies go? Because that was something that was pretty cool about that.
I'd be more than happy to give all the council all the data we've got from the speed. It's like white noise.
Gee, thanks.
Every car, the speed on it. And that's what some we're trying to do, is go through that, which enhances the enforcement. If you can identify where the bigger problems are, put the resources to leverage them in a more aggressive manner. But yes, there are ways that we can do that, and it's probably should be, if you want to do it, we'll set up a meeting independent of this, or do a presentation at a committee meeting on a more robust analysis of all the things that are out there, and things that we are doing and things that we would like to do going forward.
Well, I will defer. I was going to point out that Mr. Palameni actually had presented, and I see this as only one component, as I've stressed over and over again. And I think that what Mr. Palameni presented, I can't remember when, a few committee meetings ago.
Yeah, maybe 2 months
Could you
ago.
speak to that a little bit?
So hopefully you remember, because I don't. We did ask for home rule legislation from the state. The idea was to be able to have the ability to use technology like what you're talking about with speed cameras and so forth, to help with the enforcement aspect, to get in areas where, let's face it, there's only so many police officers, right? So this could also help, and people know those are there. If they get tickets, they'll definitely know they're there, and hopefully that will be passed by the state and allow us to use our technology, which we have, to try to address some of these issues.
Any other questions? Go ahead, please.
This is, well, it's related to speeding, but not about reducing the speed limit, because it sounds like, based on what the chief is saying, this is going to be a longer, and what's being said, it's going to be a longer process. It's not going to happen today, tomorrow, next month.
Right, exactly.
But we continually have speeding, and so various places have asked for stop signs, and I know Mr. Coluccio says, there has to be traffic studies, et cetera. But I would say that somebody who sits on their porch on a regular basis and sees the speeding going on is a pretty good study. And so there's a.
Can we get a car up and pull over the council president at
It's not,
Warfield's house?
it's not my house, so.
Give us
So,
the place we can.
it's on Becker Street, if you want to know, it's on Becker Street. There's an entire stretch where there's no lights all the way, and they just like hit the gas and shoot all the way through. On Council Road, apparently that was a problem because you have to stop every, I was gonna say every other block, but I think it's pretty much every block. So I know that there are folks out there who really have concerns about that, and if we could, since it's going to take a while for us to get this process done, we really do need to take something to at least break people's speeding, stopping where they have to stop, if they stop. If they don't do a rolling stop. But I think we should really consider, if we can, putting up more stop signs. People are asking for it on a regular basis.
Any updates on the speed humps?
Mr. Wallen is here.
Oh.
The question, Mr. Wallen, was, okay.
He's in favor of it.
Do you want to come up?
No.
You don't want to tell us? No update? I think I don't want to, but I will.
Any status, please? Would appreciate it.
So I met with SPD Traffic. We determined the speed bumps that we like, the size, the style. They are way more labor intensive than we thought. We had everything together, and then we kind of had a pause while we went through a transition to purchasing. We have a new purchasing agent now. I have new revised quotes, and they're going to be ordered. I know we talked about ordering them, but I don't want to get into in-house business.
Sure.
We had issues with purchasing at one point, and then we were trying to determine some things, and two things coincided, so now we have everything ready. We're going to be getting them and ordering them on the state contract. This week, we were just trying to work out the details of them. They're quite large, just so everybody knows. That was part of what we were looking at to make sure the size of them, they are not speed bumps. Just so everybody's aware, these are not something that you'll see in a parking lot. These have to be made to put into traffic. So a vehicle, has to, they're called speed tables. So instead of 5 feet, these are actually going to be 14 feet. They're put in sections by OGS. They're actually anchored into the ground. That was part of the thing that we're talking about. We also just do a little due diligence because John Cluccio talked with his counterpart in Albany after our meetings. Albany just put $500,000 into Arbor Hill with what they're calling like a test program, but it is permanent. They put in permanent speed bumps. So we went and I talked with our paving contractor about that, and the cost to do it in that way really outweighed the temporary ones, even with the installation, because even if we were to temporarily pave, almost put asphalt humps into there, every year we'd have to mill them out. We'd have to do a lot of work, so we moved away from them. They weren't as cost feasible. So they are, I talked to the vendor not yesterday, Monday. I talked to the vendor on Thursday. We're gonna go with a yellow pattern, so we're in a good spot for them. We don't have them yet, but we will have them soon.
Thank you for that update. Sure. Go ahead, please. You have a question?
Will you take them up for winter?
Yes, they have to come up with
For plowing?
Yep. Yeah, and that's part of it. If we have permanent ones, if we do determine locations for permanent, there are ways that, you key in the asphalt, you end up put markers on each side to alert plows, you put the signs ahead. There are municipalities with permanent speed bumps on roadways, so it is possible, but I think the conversation was, let's try these, see how they affect things. Also, not to talk about your business and things, but, we were just meeting with them about new signs. The new radar signs, we just had a meeting with that vendor. So there are a lot of things that we're looking at. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback about the stop signs with the blinking LED lights. And I know that John is actually looking at, if there's other locations that would benefit from those. So, I think the goal is always to have more tools in your toolbox. And so maybe these will help, because enforcement can only do so much.
Right.
So.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you for that update.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't think we can have this back in 2 weeks.
No, I don't think so either. I really just wanted to make sure we were all still.
So you're gonna follow the authority chief and work on getting all of and get John and getting another stuff in. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
This is just my own curiosity, Chief. So I would think that, we would probably prioritize based on whatever data we get, and as well as prioritize like school areas with schools and things like that. But I was just thinking, do we find, and of course I don't expect you to have a perfect answer to this. This is really just my own curiosity. Like, do we find like in areas right now where like school zones where there's already a reduced speed expectation there? Does that work, or do you think that like overall is that effective? You think? Because I would think that if it is effective there, I mean there is some variables there, but it might kind of lend support for the larger community as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. If I answered that, I probably would just be guessing, giving my own opinion on that, which I think is yes, it does have an effect. When people know the speed limit's been reduced, they typically slow down. There's always the exceptions to the rules, but I think that there's a comfort level knowing that 30 mile an hour is where the limit is, and police officers won't stop you unless you're going 5 to 10 miles over. So I'm doing 37, I'm fine. But if you're 12 over at 25, then you better slow down, because setting that at 25 where the expectation is maybe they'll do 30.
I see what you're saying.
And if I could just add to that a little bit, there was research done, there are national studies that were part of the legislation, even that the state Assembly and Senate sent to Governor Hochul, that did indicate percentages of if the speed was reduced just even that 5 miles down from 30 to 25, they did see, and I can't remember the specifics, but I can get it for you. They did see a reduction in speed, exactly the way that the chief is indicating. Not to mention that that 5 mile drop in the speed limit also increased the safety of pedestrians. And so that data was included in the initial piece of legislation that we had looked at back in June, I guess it was. So I'll try to dig that up and get it out again.
If there's no other question, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's call to order government operations. We have one item on the agenda. That's the discussion regarding the residency board, and that's President Porterfield.
Thank you. So as we know, we put forth legislation regarding changing the residency requirements, and that did fail. However, part of the current residency requirements is that there's a residency board, which should be convened in order to give people who reside outside of the city waivers. So that's something that really needs to be convened. It's up to the mayor to convene it. It's 5 members on the board. The mayor has a representative, himself, or a representative that he chooses, corporation council as well, and then 3 from the council. So I'm going to be recommending that we get those members on that board and reconvene the board and look at looking at those individuals who are currently working within the city who do not currently have a waiver. So just wanted to have that discussion, or just to mention that. So.
Any other thoughts or discussion around that? Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.
Okay, I'd like to open,
I'd like to call the Board of City Development and Planning. We have 9 items on the agenda. First item is 501 State Street license agreement for outdoor patio. Mr. Wallen.
501 State Street is a new building that is almost done with construction at the corner of State Street and I believe Barrett in Clinton. It's a Redburn property. One of the tenants, the main tenant on the ground floor, is a restaurant. The restaurant is going to be owned and operated by the Nest chef and manager. They're going to be opening a new restaurant into that building. One of the components that the Nest features that is a big hit is a large outdoor patio that was previously used by previous restaurants, Sliding Dirty. They would like to have a similar outdoor space, as they believe it really energizes the downtown block. However, all of the property out front of the building is on the property line, would be city property. So we would need a license agreement, not a revocable permit, for this patio, as it would be a permanent structure, permanent in the way that to remove it would be a burden on everyone. They're aware that there are some utilities underneath it. We are looking to check the condition of those utilities, but it would be primarily for seating for the restaurant. And there was a sketch in your package, and this program project is supported by Metroplex, who is working with them on the funding and development of it.
So, Mr. Wallen, for this, so this is for the restaurant that's going to go here now.
Correct.
If for some reason they go out of business, is this going to still be part of the structure of that particular restaurant? So if, you know, another restaurant came in, they would still be able to utilize this, or this?
Yes.
Only particular, okay.
No, so the license agreement will not be with the restaurant, it will be with the building owner.
Okay.
So it'll be with Redburn, not with the restaurant, but the restaurant is the one that's going to be utilizing it. I mean, this is very similar to the patio before was done with Redburn for Sliding Dirty, and that business went out, and this business came in, and they utilized it. So, I mean, and if we're talking about adding to, so to speak, the assets of downtown, it would be, you know, it's an addition. It's not something that I would think is a burden. It's also on half, if you were to look. So even if somehow they were to have to split it, you know, where one side is a different retail and the left side is this, they could do that. From a flexibility standpoint, I think, I mean, most likely we'd always want to be a restaurant. I don't know many other businesses that have a front patio like this, but.
Yes.
CDTA, I know there's a big bus stop
Yes.
right there that's used. Would they relocate the bus stop?
Yeah, the bus stop, they have talked with CDTA, and the bus stop would be, I don't know about relocated, they're looking, but there is we have a very large bus stop at MVP and Veterans Park, and a bus stop under the bridge at State Street. So this bus stop was seen as not as critical, because we have these two large bus stops, one in a park and one under the bridge. But yeah, that bus stop will not remain.
I just see
Bitches everything
lots of people move there, so.
Yeah, so I think the people who ride the bus might think it might be find a little inconvenient to have that moved. So I don't know if we talk about really having another one downtown. There's just not a lot of bus stops downtown. I don't take the bus, but I see people taking the bus. And I do want to mention that some of you may have gotten an email from a downtown business owner regarding the construction, what was happening, seeing a lot of debris and things from the construction, but I want you to know that that this was supposed to come before us 2 weeks, but before that happened, we wanted to make sure that the developer was aware of those concerns and was addressing them, and that did happen.
Did happen.
So just in case you, I would assume that you all have gotten the email, but a business owner did have concerns. So before we moved forward with this, we made sure that those concerns were addressed. So thanks to Metroplex and to Mr. Wallen as well for making sure that happened. Any other questions regarding this?
I'll move this.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Wallen, but you can stay. All right, the second item on the agenda, memorandum of understanding with Capital District Transportation Authority for the bike share program cycle.
Yep. So for the past 3 years, the city, in cooperation with the CDT, has contributed to the operation of the bike share program. It is the branded bikes that are located throughout the city. The bike share program is it's a costly program to be able to bring affordable bicycle and use to all the urban areas. So they've asked that all the participating cities, which have the majority of the bikes, Schenectady, Albany, Troy, and Saratoga, have a contribution to the program. This is a continuation of that. It's a re-upping of the 3-year agreement. The cost is the same, $25,000 a year. As a benefit, we had to put in there, because not many city employees know about it. We're going to try to advertise it a little bit better with Mary Ann. Is city employees do get an opportunity to use the bikes for free. You just have to enter in your city email address, and it allows you to create an account where you can utilize the bikes. It's a benefit of the city being a participant. So.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
So
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Third item on the agenda, award the bid and contract for the Washington Avenue and State Street Empire Trail to Callahan Industries.
So this is a really great small project that we're working on. As some of you may know, several years ago we did a test project on Washington Avenue in the Stockade where we introduced a counterflow bike lane. If anyone's familiar with the Empire Trail in the city, it goes down Union Street, but when it gets to the South Church area, because Washington Avenue is one way from State to Union, a bicycle cannot legally go down that way. So the bicycle has to go to South Church Street, onto State Street in front of what was the former YMCA, and then onto the path. So this is a long time coming project. However, when we went out there to actually institute the project, we noticed that the sidewalks at State and Washington were not wide enough to accommodate bikes. If you were to go over the bridge, draw your attention to the county did a project coming from the community college up. When it got to the city border, the sidewalks go back down to 5 feet. So I didn't want to invest money to promote bicycles on Washington Avenue and leave this roughly 75-foot section that was not really compliant. So we went out and we did a design, work with the DOT, and we're going to widen the sidewalk to a accessible width. So it's going to be right around 10 feet, maybe a little bit more in certain areas, so that now when you come to the city, there is a smooth transition from bike lane to bike lane, and then you're going to be able to either ride Washington Avenue one way or actually use the counterflow bike lane and come against traffic. It's a little unique. It will be signed and striped, but that is the appropriate way to do it, and that will kind of just help our standing with the bike lane in the area. So it's a very small project, but I really think it is going to be appreciated by everyone that uses the Empire Trail.
And there's a lot.
Ms. Patrick?
So it was $349,000, and it says that it's going to be local funds. Can you just be a little bit more specific?
Sure. We're going to use our borrowed capital funds.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah, there was a misprint in the first one. I didn't know if you saw it, so I just wanted to but we because this is not just a road project, it's a bike project, it's easiest just to use our local capital funds.
Okay.
And not CHIPS. Usually we use our CHIPS funding when it's just streets. So that's what we're going to use. And we're good. We have plenty of money.
Mr. Wallen, was there any input from those, I guess there's some bicycle club, a bicycle group that around this being, this change or in this improvement?
Well, I mean, the most vocal that I work with is Art Clayman. He's always, and this is a project that he's been asking about for years. I'm not aware of any other bicycle groups that have come out. But Art, this was I thought you were going to talk about the Stockade. When we did the test, it was something where we thought we were going to get a lot of pushback, and it actually went really smoothly. We got a lot of positive feedback. I see, Rich nodding his head about it. And so, I think what I was nervous about was unluckily that I went out there and I observed everything in the conditions, because I think if I had done the bike lane and just paved it and striped it and said I'm done, and then turned that 90 degrees and seen that sidewalk, I think I would have looked a little bad. And I'm not trying to look bad up here. I'm trying to always look as best as I can. So this is really going to, I think everyone is really going to appreciate it. All the way around, and we're working with the county on even improving some of the signage, so that when you get into Schenectady, you know where to go for the other trails and other paths. Because when you come in now as a bicyclist, we're not doing a lot of focused advertising to you. It's more of that generic, you are here are these things, but it's like, well, where's the Central Park Vale Trail Connector? Where's the Harbor Trail? Where's the Stockade Trail? We're not focused on that aspect of it, and that's one of the things that we're going to be working on too.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'll move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wellman. Just a reminder, the Metroplex, they want to put in an application for the Restore New York grant. There was a public hearing held on 9/12. I think we only had one speaker, and at this point in time, entertain a motion to move it forward so that they can actually put in their application.
So
any questions?
Second.
Okay, no questions, huh?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, any questions?
I jumped the gun.
Nobody? Okay. Moving second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is It Starts With Me Anti-Litter Action Plan. We have 3 council members, so Patrick, Toro, and Palomini, and who wants to start the discussion?
I'll start the discussion. And this really, I have to say, in the larger context of what we were just talking about in terms of speeding and traffic, behavior, and how do we influence behavior. We also have talked about the noise issue. All of these issues that are quality of life issues all come back to behavioral types of, how do we get folks to really think about their neighbors? How do we get folks to think about their own behavior? So I wanted to start out with that. So obviously all of us have expressed and talked about the fact that, we have a littering problem within the city. And so this is one attempt at putting forth some ideas, and thank you for sending out the plan to all the council people. What we're doing here is giving you this plan so that we can get some feedback back from everyone. Once again, this is not a quick fix. This is not something that will happen tomorrow, but we wanted to present it to folks and see what reactions were. Basically, there's 4 areas within this plan. The first being education and outreach, and that would involve, how do we work with youth? How do we work with adults? But another aspect of this are partnerships. So we think about how do we partner with the school district? How do we partner with businesses around trying to think about how we get rid of some of the litter issues that are around. There's an infrastructure component. There's 4 components: education, infrastructure, which in our proposal is really looking at equipment, trash cans, other types of things like that that would have to be a part of what we try to do. And like with the speeding and the traffic issue, another piece are laws and enforcement of those laws in terms of trying to clean up the city. So there's a lot of detail in this. I hope that you might have had a chance to look at it. It obviously is for a larger discussion. I'd like to turn it over to Ms. DeToro now to talk a little bit more about, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Palomini, to talk a little bit about the why care about litter aspect, and especially as it relates to people's health and the environment.
Sure. Certainly there's a health and environmental component, the environmental piece, where we're throwing stuff out our windows, whether it's plastic that leaches into the ground and eventually gets into our rivers, oceans, even our groundwater. We're consuming that with the things that we eat and drink. We don't know the overall impacts because they're minute levels, but what we do know is over time, those minute levels add up. And we also don't know the cross-contaminations with other things that we're ingesting into our bodies. So we do know some of these things are carcinogenic, but how they impact our overall health is pretty negative, and that adds to all our costs, whether we're talking about healthcare, insurance, or any of those type of things, beyond the human toll of losing a loved one or having someone die at a much younger age than they probably should have. The other aspect, of course, is the environment. Some of that ties together with our fish, the soil quality, our water quality, and just even small things. I know we introduced a straw thing a while ago, it didn't pass, but small things like that add up. And the plastics break down into microplastics, and that impacts our environment pretty significantly. We see the impacts on the animals and the other wildlife, as well as just the plants. So there is a big toll here with littering beyond just the sight and the smell. And those are all things that we need to take into consideration.
And if I could move to Ms. DeToro to talk a little bit about the illegal, the costs of the illegal dumping and other litter in the city.
Sure. So it starts with me. I'm very excited about this. I do take photos and I do report trash on the street, multiple areas that are littered beyond anything I can even pick up. So one thing that really bothers me is illegal dumping. I've seen it, it's not in the city of Schenectady, but over by the Jewish cemetery behind the cross, it's actually Rotterdam. There's about 3 different dump sites there of plasterboard, wood. It's just horrible to even look at. So I have called the town of Rotterdam to report that at times. But the cost it takes, my cousins live over at Steinmetz Park, across the street on Lennox Road, and multiple times they actually see people backing their trucks up to the pond and putting their construction debris in there. So, and it always has been reported, but in order for the city to have to deal with the cost factor involved in this, extra manpower and time going out and cleaning up other people's garbage, and that's something that we really don't want to do. So that's another facet of this. And just going into the infrastructure, we heard one of our students here today talking about trash cans, how they'd like more trash cans, so that's all involved in this. So there's all little different components that we can pull out at different times and start a structure with, but it starts with me. It should start with everyone, and talk to your neighbors. You know, pick it up, just pick it up. So there's a lot of different things that are very important to our community. So I was hoping maybe Mr. Farley could share a story that he shared once about maybe a group of students who brought somewhere. Okay, this really breaks my heart, this story, and maybe you could share that.
So this is quite some time ago. I was working with a youth group, and one of the kids in our youth group, he used to love to eat sunflower seeds. I don't know why, but he just did. But we were constantly getting on him about picking up his garbage. And we took, we would pick up kids throughout the county, and we went to one of the other kids' houses to pick him up, and in a pretty affluent neighborhood. And the young man was eating his sunflower seeds, and he threw the wrapper on the floor. And when he threw the wrapper on the floor, he picked it up. And that was something really odd for him, to do without, us trying to say, hey, And I asked him why he did that. Because I was like, oh, why'd you pick that up? And he said to me, because this doesn't look like the type of place you can throw garbage. But yet, the neighborhood that we picked him up from, that we dropped him off on, he would throw garbage there. So I think that there's something to be said, and I appreciate you remembering that. There's something to be said around, the messaging that we send to our young people about where they live. And it also demonstrates that if you make the right structural changes, then it will shift behavior.
Thank you.
That's a great story.
I remember that.
So the rest of these pages, and it's a 10-page document all told, really go into thoughts and ideas that we had. I think there's more that could be had. There's some of these that are things that could be implemented sooner rather than later. There are things that cost money. There are things that don't cost money. So at this point, we just really wanted to leave you with all of this. Again, it starts with me. I think will certainly lend itself to working with youth in terms of having pledges, in terms of having poster contests, in terms of, of course, cleanups like we've done at Zoller and other places. There's also a section in here, however, that talks about the partnerships with businesses. And it starts with me pledge there, where we'd be trying to get businesses to think about, having appropriate trash receptacles, appropriate cigarette butt, those devices that DSIC, for example, does put around downtown. The infrastructure section has ideas on various equipment, from ones that are individually held, like a backpack almost, that's like a vacuum, to more kind of driving apparatus that can be used to help with the litter. So at this point, unless Ms. DeToro or Mr. Palomeni want to add anything else to this, to what we are presenting, I think we're looking for feedback. We're looking for your thoughts when you get a chance to look at this, if you haven't already.
Yeah, I'll just say the It Starts With Me is already an existing program within the city. It's just tweaking it and putting together a fairly comprehensive, where we're looking at legislative, judicial, executive branch pieces tied in with community and not-for-profit and education and the school district and putting it all together to try to get everybody moving towards that goal of less trash on the streets and improving our neighborhoods.
Yeah, something just crossed my mind. A couple of years ago, we passed amended city ordinance with regards to litter, and it was supposed to be enforced by the police department. We had some issues with the ticketing process, and we were supposed to, Corporation Council were supposed to look at how to amend or revise that ticketing process so that it doesn't get thrown out. And I think Ms. Palomini and I was on that driving force in that. Where are we at and how different is that to what is being presented today? And can we work with Corporation Council to look at something that was outstanding there to amend that ticketing process, and our PD can go there and issue these citations?
So yeah, you're 100% right. What happened was Corporation Council at the time, not Mr. Colvin, was working with the court system to create a ticket that was more of a summons type thing, where it was very quick in comparison to a full-blown ticket to give out. He worked with the court system to try to produce this. The judges ended up throwing these tickets out in large mass, unfortunately. I think Mr. Colvin is aware of this, and I think he will be working, try to figure out some way of moving this forward to make it more effective and something that the judges won't throw out. And I think a benefit too is having Commissioner Devine on staff, a former judge. Yeah, I think that would be beneficial too.
Yeah. I think that's something that we need to look at, because that's something on the books already. So we should try to work on amending it and enforcing it, rather than adding more on top of it. And this might complement that we already have there. So I think we don't want to just recreate more at the same time, and we just need to have Mr. Colding just follow up on that and see what is needed to move forward with that.
Well,
Page 8, I think, is where that something similar to that is addressed on a couple of the bullet points on page 8 of our proposal. So I don't know if it's exactly the same as what you had talked about previously.
Yeah, Ms. Pauline and I got back and forth with Corporation Council, the police department, in terms of how we can able to address that. And this was a couple of years ago, and nothing ever happened to the end result.
And the other aspect, though, is not really creating another enforcement piece. It's just all the different components of how we can address litter and try to get people to change their behavior. Yes, there's a section that is enforcement, and to your point with that ticket process, that's kind of what's in here. But there's some other things like, are we charging too much for a ticket or not enough? You know, those are things that we kind of need to look at. To Ms. DeToro's point of the illegal dumping, you know, that's something that maybe we want to look at the fine for and make it more costly to do those kind of things. But maybe it's already too expensive. So we need to look at those things and try to address them.
So I know that it starts with me with something that the mayor implemented several years ago, several years ago. So as Mr. Palomine says, this is something that is already in existence. So I have a question. I know that Mr. O'Hearn, Charlie O'Hearn, has been the person who's been kind of taking care of the litter as a one-man, with volunteers. So I wanted to know, is there some input from him in here? And also, have we consulted Mr. LaFond regarding this? And additionally, I don't know, Mayor, if you want to speak to the whole garbage part of it, or if you're ready for that discussion, and how it's mentioned in here that how garbage that people don't properly tie up and all that adds to the litter. But so I just want to make sure that with whatever work that's being done here is also making sure that the works in the plans that the city has underway are going to be a part of that process.
And we have had meetings that Mr. Ahern was a part of with this, and I actually can't speak to whether Mr. LaFond has been. I don't think that we have talked to Mr. LaFond, so that's a good point.
I think, so in here is a part about our trash people who throw the bags on, because the bags aren't tied properly. And just making sure that the city staff cleans up the messes that they make. So that's all incorporated in here as well. So I do hear that complaint a lot from people. But again, their job is nonstop and it's moving. So, yeah.
And to that point, if we're going to, as this moves along, I think that the city staff is another we should be speaking to directly, because they're people on the ground every day picking up trash. When we decided to install additional trash cans through the Show Love Where You Live initiative, I actually met with them, asked them about the size, the weight, all of that, and also to get their input and also let them know that there's going to be more trash cans for you to pick up, because that was important. So I think that people who do this work every single day should not only be informed but included in making sure that they, that the plan is a plan that works for everybody.
That's a really good point. Absolutely. Did you have any comments?
It seems simple to just get people to do the basic things, but it's a far more complex engagement, and it's much like the speeding. It's how do you educate people? How do you get a shift in the social norm where people modify their behavior a little bit? So I think this is all good. It's an ongoing process. Can look to continue to have discussions. How do we implement it? How do we actually get people to play by the rules?
Any further discussion?
I guess at this point I would just ask that if folks would take a look at it and give us some feedback. And I think your comments in terms of obviously involving Mr. LaFond and talking to other folks, boots on the ground, those are very good suggestions.
Mr. Farley?
Yeah, I would just add that what I really like about what I saw here is that there's different components on here. So, and really, the components can operate independently if need be, right? So, like, if we, like, as far as the enforcement, if there's some other considerations that have to be made, and, there might be some red tape there, there's still that educational component, there's still that, some signage and things that can, kind of lend itself so they, work interdependently that way, but they can operate independently as we probably shoot through the different areas of the components. So I appreciate that.
Any further discussion? Okay, thank you for bringing that forward. The last 4 items on the agenda are for property sales, so for that reason we will go into executive session. Say motion.
Make the motion to go into executive session.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
So the public will have to leave.